You don't think Lamar Jackson's the most valuable player in the National Football League?
No, I don't.
This is absurd.
What are you talking about? Y'all are absurd. Listen, this sounds like I don't like Lamar Jackson, and that's not what it is at all. I think Lamar Jackson has come out and has become a better quarterback this year. He is doing better than I thought, throwing the ball and just, being the quarterback, especially after losing his favorite target to Mark Andrews. And I see it. But to me, the MVP is somebody who has been kicking ass and taking names week after week. He had a great game against the 49ers. Great game. The defense, exquisite against the 49ers. But he's also had 4 games this year without a touchdown pass. 4. Then he's had other games where he had 1 touchdown. 2 games, he has not been... in the words of Colin Cowherd, stars attract stars. No, I'm just kidding. This is what we do with COVINO and Rich. But I want my quarterbacks to be quarterbacky. And to me, Lamar Jackson's just a great athlete, and he's done a really good job, and he had a great game against the 49ers. Prisoners of the moment. He is not the MVP. Christian McCaffrey is the MVP, and he has been. I've been saying this for weeks. It's not like I just decided after this game. That's what happened with Lamar. After this game, he jumped up, but he wasn't even in the conversation. He was like an afterthought. It was always like Tua, Duck. No, it's Christian McCaffrey, and then 2. And, I'm not a huge fan of Tyreek Hill because of what he does off the field, but, a separate conversation. He's in the second one. If it's not Christian, it's Tyreek Hill. Those are the 2 that have stood out every week. Every week. Not Lamar Jackson. It's not that I don't like Lamar. It's not that he's not doing a good job. He is doing a good job. But he's not the MVP. I'm sorry to say it. You
can give Christian McCaffrey a most outstanding offensive player. You can give him the Offensive Player of the Year awards. That's fine. But the value of what Lamar Jackson provides to the Baltimore Ravens is more than Christian McCaffrey. This is a Niners team, again, Monse, that chased a stupid touchdown record and tried to get Christian McCaffrey NFL history in a game where they were up 30 points. Just because he scores a lot of touchdowns doesn't put him over the edge, and because he's scoring touchdowns every week doesn't make him the most valuable player.
And I don't even think that's all it is, because Raheem Mostert has, 21 touchdowns for Miami scored this season? It's not even just that. It's the eye test. He looks like no one can stop him. When they were playing the Ravens, his touchdown that he scored where it was still close, nobody could stop him. He looked unstoppable when he scored that touchdown. And I just no quarterback, I know that it's this is a quarterback award, which is so annoying to hear. No quarterback has had a dominant performance the entire season. And if I am going to give it to a quarterback, how is it not Tua? I don't think it's Lamar. And even though everyone is shifting that way, I just don't see it because of this game. We're prisoners of the moment. Absolutely not.
Shouldn't have been this past game be the game that Christian McCaffrey takes over? Shouldn't he have taken over that game?
It's really hard when your quarterback throws 4 picks. It's really hard. You don't get the ball as often. But he had more rushing yards, McCaffrey, by himself than the entire Ravens offense on the ground.
Well, but in the games that Lamar Jackson didn't throw touchdown passes, he did use his legs.
Yeah, and he always has.
Yes. He had 2. They lost to the Colts, in overtime. He had 100 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. The fact that we go week by week by this, I think, is silly. I think that as we look at it and you're trying to pinpoint stuff. I did something 2 years ago. It was more of an experiment, and I don't do it anymore. But I did an MVP pyramid. And this is the exact reason why, is because I know it frustrates you that names are just popping up kind of out of nowhere where, and if I'm hearing you right, you're saying, look at what Christian McCaffrey has done week after week after week, consistent effort. There hasn't been a drop-off, say, in a Purdy performance like we had last weekend or against the Browns or in a Lamar Jackson performance in the points that you made. What ends up happening, this happens a lot in the NBA, where randomly in March someone will have a great game and all of a sudden they jump 9 players in the MVP ladder. I remember Kawhi Leonard about 5-10 years ago. All of a sudden had a 60-point game in March, and people are like, hey, Kawhi Leonard's the MVP. We hadn't talked about him for 5 months. Yeah. Well, now Clippers. When he was a member of the Spurs, he did this. The point being is guys automatically shoot up and all of a sudden just appear. And I just don't think that is the case with Lamar. I think that Brock Purdy fit the suit. Something that Mike Harmon and I talk about on our fantasy football podcast at times. He fit the mold. Hey, quarterback of the team that we think is the best, that is putting up these great numbers, fits the suit. I don't mind the blemishes as much. What I look at is the adversity that Lamar Jackson had to overcome just to put up the numbers that he put up. And your point about Mark Andrews is just one that cannot be overstated. There's also the point of him developing a chemistry with a new receiving core that includes Odell Beckham Jr. and Zay Flowers, and they are now. I like Zay Flowers. I think a lot of people did in the draft pick, first round pick. You thought he would emerge. I did not believe in Odell Beckham Jr. as a viable threat at all, and I think he is now. And maybe that's a tip of the cap to Odell Beckham Jr., but Lamar also plays a role in that because OBJ isn't the same OBJ as he was a few years ago. And honestly, their running game now, without J.K. Dobbins for a majority of the season, it's great that they have Gus Edwards and Justice Hill, and then for a while had Keaton Mitchell, and then they've lost him. To see them put that performance together, and again, it wasn't all Lamar, but to be able to fill the gaps that they would have offensively because of what is missing just makes me talk about his value and what he means to the team so much more than a 49ers team that has basically had their entire core for the entire season.
See, and I think that's a little bit unfair in the sense because it's like just because Christian McCaffrey is part of this already awesome team, people aren't seeing what he has been doing or appreciating what he has been doing week after week after week. I agree with you that Lamar Jackson has done a really good job this year. I think he's gotten better. He is not, making decisions. Like, to me, he can't throw the ball the way other quarterbacks can throw the ball. And he, is managing that. He knows what he can do. He knows his strengths. And he's great on the ground, all of that. But, the O-line for the Ravens is a big part of why he has done so well. The defense, you can't deny. I mean, it's always been Ravens defense for years. They've always had a good defense. But, for me, again, I want my quarterbacks to be quarterbacky. If the Ravens are down by a touchdown, 8 points, 10 points, and they have the ball in less than 2 minutes, I don't know if Lamar can do it, can throw the ball and, do it in a quick amount of time. He's going to run the ball, which takes up time. So that's how I see it too. I'm just like, he is good. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying he's not good. He's just not the greatest quarterback week after week after week.
So you hated the Golden Bachelor because it wasn't some youngin' that was looking for love.
That is... What does that have to do with?
Because you're saying that Lamar Jackson is not quarterbackian and that he doesn't look like the quarterback that we love the drop back, which has always been, it's not because you're saying it. I've never felt that that's part of the conversation. Like some of the drop back passers, like we want everybody to have a career that lasts 15 years in the National Football League and have you go to Super Bowls and championship games and be able to dissect the defense like Tom Brady did, like Drew Brees did. And it's not realistic. It's never been like that. It really hasn't. But we put the guys who last 15 years because they've been there 15 years when we know them the most of that being quarterbacky. And I've just never been I don't mind when a guy runs. If Cam Newton's career is 8 seasons and it's the top of the game, I'm fine with that. That's what he does in his skill set.
Right.
Same thing with Lamar.
And I'm not taking that away from Lamar because Lamar isn't the type of quarterback. Justin Fields, like when he said, I'm the best running quarterback. I hate that. He runs the ball and he does it well. But he I don't think wants to categorize himself as only a running quarterback. I think Lamar Jackson wants to be more than that. And he has done that this year. And I agree. His receivers that he has are not the greatest receivers. I get that. Like, he has done a good job. I just think that the team around him is a big factor in why he has done well. And it's the defense more than anything, in my opinion. And it's just not in the 16, 17 weeks, Lamar Jackson has not stood out week after week. McCaffrey has stood out week after week. Tyreek Hill has stood out week after week.
What about his 11-carry, 43-yard game against the Browns?
That was a bad one. And that was a bad one. I'll give you that one. Yeah. Yeah.
What about the 15 carries and 45 yards against Minnesota when they lost?
That one was rough too. But
yeah, see, that happens. It happens with all these guys. Like you can't have a perfect ledger.
But this year, you can't deny that there has been no dominant quarterback.
No, but there's never been a game that I thought San Francisco couldn't win if they didn't have Christian McCaffrey. There's never a point where I thought, you know what, this team would be nowhere without CMC.
And that sucks. That just sucks that is the way.
Tyreek Hill, yes.
Well, yeah,
And
the
we've seen
offense
it.
changes.
Yes,
the offense, but
completely.
they still have other weapons.
Yeah.
They still have Jalen Waddle. They still have Raheem Mostert. They still have Devon Achane. But yet, the critique for Christian McCaffrey is not the same for Tyreek Hill.
But the offense did change with Miami. Like we saw for a half against the Titans.
It had to change, right, because it's Tyreek. Right. No, I agree with you. I feel that the criticism with Christian McCaffrey that he is surrounded, that he's in this really good team, and he's not getting the credit when it's like, just watch the games. He stands out.
Well, he does because he's getting the ball and they're blocking guys, 10 yards downfield.
And he's such a hybrid running back.
Here's what I think is interesting about the Tyreek Hill, Christian McCaffrey, and we do have to put a bow on this because Jared Smith's going to join us in about 7 minutes.
Jared.
Yeah, that's Jared. He's coming up in 8 minutes. The offense, you know what I'm talking about, right? It can only be Jared. The Dolphins and 49ers, Mike McDaniel comes from San Francisco.
Right.
Comes from the Kyle Shanahan system. Running, they're not identical, but there are a lot of similarities in what they have.
Fair.
And so the point that you see, and even with the Dolphins, if it's not Raheem Mostert, it's Achane.
Mm-hmm.
And Achane's dinged up, so guess what? Jeff Wilson Jr., who was in San Francisco like Mostert was, comes in and they help seal that win against the Dolphins. I think that there's even some similarities and parallels that you can make from those two. I'm not saying that if you took Brandon Ayuk out of the 49ers lineup that there's nothing that you can do. I think maybe that would have a bigger sort of effect than maybe what you would see if Elijah Mitchell or Jordan Mason took over the running back position from San Francisco. And I think that's what you see with Miami in why it may not be apples to apples, but I think it's pretty darn close. And it's also I think that he's a product of what they do in San Francisco. And there was never a point where San Francisco couldn't have won a game if they didn't have Christian McCaffrey.
That's not fair.